Senator Mitchell, on debate.
On debate. Thanks, Madam Speaker. I rise today to support Bill C-45. I know that comes as a surprise. I feel very strongly about it, though. This bill addresses the failure demonstrated over decades, literally, of the existing regime governing marijuana use in Canada. Bill C-45 will do that, and while doing that, will also reduce many of the ways in which that regime, the current one in Canada, sustains damage to individuals and to our society. The current criminalization of cannabis sustains, if not promotes, unabated and heightened health risk for the literally millions of Canadians who use cannabis, despite the fact that today it's illegal. Secondly, support for organized crime and other criminal elements will be and is promoted by this current regime. The policing and court process costs of administering this ineffective regime will be rectified by Bill C-45. The assignment of criminal records to those convicted of using cannabis currently will be rectified, and the disproportionate harm caused by the radicalized application of the current laws will also be addressed by Bill C-45. This is a bill that the current majority government campaigned and was elected upon, reflecting a broad support amongst Canadians for legalizing and regulating cannabis, which has consistently been reconfirmed by polling. As several have alluded to in this debate, the current laws making cannabis illegal are so disrespected by broad swaths of our population as to make them inappropriate and useless. At one university in Western Canada, there is what is called Weed Wednesday each week. Students gather by the dozens, if not by the hundreds, in an open common space in the afternoon on Wednesdays and smoke cannabis, surrounded literally and quietly observed by the police. Speaking of the police, that reminds me of a conversation I had with a policeman who visited me, and I'm sure they did a number of other senators, as they do from time to time, here in Parliament. He said that he had in his entire career literally never had a fight with anybody on marijuana, only with those who had been drinking. I am in no way disputing the science that indicates that cannabis can have negative health effects on developing brains under the age of 25. A number of senators have made that point and raised this concern, and it's one that I share. The science surely indicates that there are health effects on younger brains, as it does, as a matter of fact, for playing hockey. In fact, the science accepted and promoted by the Canadian Medical Association also tells us that an adult male should have no more than 2 alcohol drinks a day, but Canadians aren't put in jail for having a third. So the science, while telling us that there is a problem, does not dictate any specific kind of solution. That is for public policymakers to decide, and that's what we're doing here today. There are those who continue to default to the one approach that experience clearly indicates does not work to alleviate cannabis use. That is, making cannabis illegal and imposing criminal penalties on those who are caught using it and dealing it. For instance, in 2016, over 40,000 cannabis possession incidents were reported, and 17,000 Canadians were arrested for offences, suggesting that this is not, particularly the current system, a great deterrent. In fact, Canada currently has one of the highest rates of cannabis use in the world, higher than some places where it is legal. Furthermore, there is a general disregard of the current law amongst Canadians, coupled with a broad support for its repeal and legalization. While there is a general acceptance that education can be effective and is necessary in reducing usage, I believe that without legalization, efforts in this regard have been impeded. For instance, it is very difficult, if not downright risky, to speak about the use of illegal substances to children without being accused by someone of encouraging its use. Secondly, that there has been a distinct dearth of education programs to this point, also suggesting an implicit belief that putting people in jail for cannabis use somehow does the trick and somehow fulfills the need to educate, as if to say, put them in jail and that'll teach them. As I have said, this clearly does not work. Legalization and taxation will provide significantly increased funding for education and regulation. It will also allow for research that will further underscore and enhance education and regulation. The federal government had previously announced allocation of $46 million to education, and in the recent budget it added $62 million, and in fact it has already started a multifaceted awareness campaign to reduce the use of marijuana. In addition, I would expect, and this hasn't yet become apparent, but I would expect that provinces will undertake funding of education programs, as they often do now for alcohol and tobacco. Experience also indicates that there is tremendous damage and risk to not legalizing cannabis use. Currently, young people and others receive criminal records which are highly damaging to their future employment prospects and their ability to contribute at their utmost level to the economy and to society. Incarcerating somebody for cannabis puts them in a place, jail, where they are inevitably surrounded by hardened criminals. Enormous amounts of policing and court resources are absorbed by the criminalization of cannabis, resources that we are all aware are under significant pressure. Anyone buying cannabis today without a prescription, including youth, has to, by definition, interact with a criminal to get it. This dealer, this criminal, will be a person who is undoubtedly not particularly concerned with whatever contaminants may be in that cannabis. It is generally accepted that the black market in cannabis is one of the mainstays of organized crime and underscores at least some of the street violence that is endemic to it. Once cannabis becomes legal, the government will be able to focus more aggressively on educating the public with the goal of helping to reduce cannabis consumption. I have seen a statistics which indicates that when Canadians got very serious about reducing tobacco usage, about 55% of Canadians were using it. Today, it's about 12%. Education programs can work and do work. To be sure, legitimate concerns and questions have been raised in this debate about legalizing cannabis. For instance, at what age should it be legal? Some argue that because there is science that indicates problems potentially for brains under 25 years old, an age limit above 18 or 19 would be appropriate. Implicit in this argument is the notion that somehow a person over 18 and up to, say, 25 may not have the maturity to assess the risk of this particular product. Yet people of this age are right now allowed to marry, raise children, buy alcohol, do extreme sports, vote, and drive. We also accept and acknowledge that people of this age have the adequate judgment to join the military, the police, and other high-intensity, high-risk first responder professions. These young people can be doctors, nurses, teachers, lawyers, and they are eligible to run for elected office. It seems to me that it could be argued that it is somewhat patronizing to say that people under the age of 25 cannot evaluate increasingly available information on cannabis science to make a reasoned decision about whether or not to use it. Will legalization deplete or remove the black market? I firmly expect that it will. Most people will not choose an illegal source if a legal one is available. In fact, I expect they will be willing to pay a premium for the relief of not having to buy illegally and for the heightened quality of the legal regulated product. For those not convinced of this, I would say that the worst case is that some black market might continue, but it will inevitably be reduced and remain illegal, just as the entire market is now. Legalizing cannabis won't make the reach of the black market any worse. I expect over time the black market will simply atrophy. I say, tongue-in-cheek, it would be quite difficult to buy hooch today, although I bet there was some of it around for a while post-prohibition. What about pricing? Government will tax it. Government will not price it, I expect. The market will price it. Some have said that the 10% tax is very low compared to the taxes on tobacco. I expect that that is designed to limit the price to some extent to ensure that the black market, in fact, atrophies. So, honourable colleagues, I am voting for C-45 at second reading and would encourage each of you to do so as well in order to get this bill to the committee where the many legitimate concerns and questions that have been raised here will be considered, discussed, and debated in greater detail. Thank you.
Senator Mitchell, will you accept a question?
I certainly would, yeah.
Senator White.
Yeah, thank you very much, Speaker. Senator Mitchell, I wonder if you could explain how somebody under the age of 18 could obtain marijuana in any other way other than illegal marijuana.
Senator Mitchell.
I guess my first question would be, my first answer would be a question to your question, which is, how can somebody under 18, who's talking here? Yeah.
You are.
I'm listening.
Well, I think you have to sit down. How would anybody under 18 get anything but illegal marijuana today? But what's happening today, what's happening once it is legalized, is we will be able to address much, much more aggressively the education, the input, the information, the programs to direct them at youth under 18 years of age in order to encourage and drive their reduction. The reason not now, if Senator Karen had listened to my speech, clearly I'm happy to give it again, is that one, I think because there had been this pervasive belief that kind of put education and other programs out of our heads, and that was that somehow putting people in jail, making it illegal, did it all. And as I say, clearly we know it didn't do it, but it kind of said, well, put them in jail, that'll teach them. It didn't teach them. But now we'll have resources. We'll be able to talk about it because it is a legal substance in a way that it hasn't been. And I believe that we will get much, much more focused on reducing usage, just as has been the case with tobacco.
Senator White.
Isn't it true, Senator, that all marijuana accessed by somebody under the age of 18 today is illegal, and all marijuana accessed by somebody under the age of 18, if this bill passed, will still be illegal? I acknowledge that the government could do more from an education, healthcare, addictions, counseling perspective. They haven't, but they could. But it will still be illegal then, like it is now.
Senator Mitchell.
I know you're not arguing that we should drop the age to 12, but I am saying liquor is also illegal to people under 18. So I'm not sure how you distinguish one from the other. The fact of the matter is that it's illegal for people to drink under 18, and it's illegal for people to drink, or it will remain illegal for people to use marijuana under the age of 18. That doesn't make the situation any worse, but on the other hand, legalizing will make the situation much better in many other ways.
Senator White, yes.
But isn't it true when it comes to alcohol? I'm glad you used that as a reference. Because at 17, growing up in Cape Breton, my 21-year-old brother would have bought me a six-pack of beer. And he would have got a $54 fine if he got caught doing that. Under this legislation, my brother would get 14 years in jail. So you've made the penalty so great, you are driving under 18 to a black market with this legislation.
Senator Mitchell.
I'm kind of thinking you're meeting yourself going the other way. On the one hand, you're saying I think it's really bad if youth under 18 use it. On the other hand, you're saying that you're thinking harsh penalties for people who would give it to people under 18 aren't going to work. And yet, at the same time, you're arguing that there should be harsh penalties overall for the use of marijuana.
Perhaps Senator White should be asked the question.
My point is the government has given no thought to the impact of legalizing marijuana in this legislation. They're identifying the fact that this will reduce black market sales to under 18-year-olds, but at the same time increase the penalty against somebody giving them it. The only place they can get it is black market. That's my point. It's not about whether any or parts of this legislation should pass. They have given no thought. The only committee they put in charge of trying to decide what they should do, their only task was to legalize marijuana, not to look at the impact, not to look at the fact that 1 or 2 countries and 3 or 4 states have legalized it and see what impact they had. In fact, they didn't even go to Colorado to ask them what they did. Instead, they went there to see how they legalized it. My point is They haven't given thought to the impact, obviously, when they're not going to see any difference in the group they're going to target, which is under 18s.
Senator Mitchell?
Well, I see it very differently than you do, but you're in luck, because if we, as we should do, pass this bill on Thursday into committee, you can exactly study that question to your heart's content within committee and come back and report it to us. And perhaps there'll be an answer to that. But I don't see it that way, and I think we're going to advance it greatly.
Because your time is up.
Is it completely up?
Would you?
Thank you.
Senator Uzakos on debate.